Hello everybody. Today, I couldn't think of a project we should do in the forging wise, so this time we're going to have a talk about some anvils today. Just different things about them, different parts, and what they do, what they're for, and about mine in particular, and then what I started with, and then what you should and shouldn't use as a starter anvil and things. Alright, well, this is the anvil I'm using right now. It's a mouse hole anvil. It's about 125 pounds. From the dating I looked at it, it was made in about the 1850s or 60s from the marks I found on the anvil. Mouse hole anvils used to be one of the most dominantly imported anvil types brought to America from the early 1800s to about the Civil War. And they were like handmade for a while, and then they switched to a water hammer, and they still classified it as handmade because it wasn't technically a mechanical hammer. But anyway, about that, this is a London patent anvil. That just means the style of it, but this is, other anvils like that would be like Peter Wright and Haybutton and stuff like that. But we talk about some things, how you can figure out some stuff about anvils. Some anvils, you can classify how much it weighs because there's 3 numbers on the bottom of some of them. Like the first one, whatever the number is, you multiply it by 112. Then the second one, you multiply by 128, or not 128, just 28. And then the last number is whatever pounds you have remaining. So for the London patent anvils were like the first anvils that had extra parts on them, basically. After the Middle Ages, they just had stump anvils, or big blocks, and then into the colonial anvils, they started having some hardy holes and Purchell holes. But then once the London patent came out, most of them started having a horn, the cutting table, and the hardy holes in it too. So basically with the London patent, you would be able to do almost whatever style of forging you wanted on it, just because it included all these tools on it. But yeah, now we'll start going over some of the parts. Alright, you can't see some of the parts on my anvil right now because I have it chained. There's a lot of chains on it because I use the chains a lot for hold downs for things, because I haven't made a hold down tool yet. But down here you can see sticking out, these are the feet. And then right where the chain is, there's the waist. And then the body is right here. And then this is the heel or the tail of the anvil, depending on who you talk to or where you're from. Alright, this here is the horn of the anvil, or the bick. It can be used for bending, rounding things over, and tapering and drawing out. There's basically endless uses for the horn of the anvil. And then right here is the cutting table. This here is the face of the anvil. On this old mouse hole anvil like this, and a lot of the other older anvils, the body is made from wrought iron, and then has a piece of hardened carbon steel on top of it. If you look carefully, there's some chipped edges on my anvil here. Right here. That's where I'm back in the past. Pieces of the hardened face chipped off and it needs repaired. I don't have a welder right now to do that, but once I get one up and running, I can get her fixed up. I got this anvil from a salvage yard whenever I first got it. But anyway, back to the parts. The face, this here is the hardy hole. You can use it for certain things, but it's mostly just for putting tools in it. Like this is a riveting tool I made to go into the hardy hole, and I have cut off hardies and stuff like that to go in. And then this is the Purchell hole. Right here, this little round hole in the back. It's for punching things. It got its name because the it was used for there's a certain punch that's called a perchel that's for punching holes in horseshoes. And then that's what that would be for, and that's where it got its name. And then over here, there is the step. This is the step down from where the hardened face meets the body. And then there is the, right here is the table and the cutting face of the anvil. You don't want to cut anything on here on the face of the anvil because then you'll damage it. That's what the table here is for. If you want to cut something with a little hot chisel or something like that, or keep the face from getting damaged, that's what you use this part for. And then back to the horn again. Alright, well, now that I showed you what some of the parts are, a lot of people just look at the anvil as something that you lay metal on and hit till it's to the right shape. When actually, it's wrong. An anvil is actually a very intricate tool with a lot of different parts that you can use to your advantage. And if you don't, then you're just not taking full advantage of the situation. And I didn't know all of this stuff when I first started, but if I know a lot now, and I still don't know everything there is to know about it. But the edges here and here, this is the well, from how I am right now, this is the far edge and this is the near edge. You can use those for making step downs in the metal and offsetting things like that. And for you can use it for making bends and scrolls, because whenever you start off making a scroll, you take your material and then you just give it glancing blows until it starts to curl up and stuff like that. And then a lot of people use them for tapering. Alex Steele and Brian Brazil have an excellent method of doing tapers and reducing material with the edges of the anvils, making far tapers both directions rather quickly. And then for the horn of the anvil, like I said before, it's mostly for bending and rounding things off. But you can also use it for drawing out things, material, stuff like that. But and tapering. And then you have the heel of the anvil with the perchel hole and the hardy hole, which can be used because you can help use them for bending, and you can make lots of holes to fit into it for that. And the heel, and for the edge of your anvil, what you want to have is a rounded edge and a sharp edge on it somewhere. So that way you can use the rounded edges for doing your tapers and step downs and things like that, and then you use the sharp edge to clean things up a bit. And depending on what you're making, you want one or the other. But if you don't have such great edges on your anvils, you can make tools that go in a hardy hole for making better edges and things like that. But besides that, there's all kinds of things you can do with the anvil itself. Alright, well, now that we went over some parts of the anvils and what you can do with them, now we can talk about what it's like at the beginning. I know whenever I started, and what a lot of other people I've talked to, whenever they started, it's all about wanting to get the right tools that you need. What you see all of the big name smiths having, with power hammers and anvils and all the fancy belt grinders and all that stuff. But you don't actually need all that to start. For anvils, Alex Steele and Brian Brazil have a good idea with them. Like, because you're starting out, you don't really need the best kind of anvil, and you shouldn't really, because then you'll end up damaging it just from use and mishits and things like that. So what they do, they've made mild steel anvils, and they work really great, because then it doesn't matter if you ding it all up and stuff, like, because you can just take a grinder and grind it smooth again. But also I've seen people use anything from, they just take a sledgehammer head and then put it into a stump standing straight up, and that works great. I've seen a lot of people use that. But whenever I started off with a piece of railroad track as my anvil, and it worked pretty good. I could do enough to get me learning, enough to get into it. And it works really good. The way I used it was just sitting on a log like this, but there's lots of better ways to do it. There's a lot of people who will carve a hole in the log and set it straight up on end like this, which from what I heard from other people anyway, that it's a better way because there's more mass behind each hit you have. So that works too. But I used mine like this just for space sake. And one thing that people shouldn't get is the cast iron anvils that they have at big market item stores like Harbor Freight and stuff like that. They're just junk. You shouldn't get them. They'll crack and fall apart on you. They're not made for use. They're basically just there to look pretty. And same thing for like vices that have little anvil faces and stuff on them. They'll be okay for like small stuff, like really little things. But I wouldn't recommend using one. But if that's all you could really get, even if you just couldn't go to like a salvage yard or a junkyard and pick up a piece of big hunk of steel to just work with, then I guess you could use it, but I wouldn't recommend. I just say get any kind of piece of steel that's got some mass to it that isn't cast iron, because that just falls apart over time and it's not really worth your money. Would be getting belt grinders and things like that, and just other stuff like that. Don't worry about it too much, because you might end up putting all this money into this if you're doing it as a hobby, and then you might not even like it. So then you just wasted like a couple $100 at least for something that you don't like and aren't really going to use. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, share it to your friends, get it out there. I'd like to talk to as many people as I can about blacksmithing and things involved with it. I do these videos so that way I can show people things that I know, and so that way I can learn myself if I'm doing anything wrong or not. So please share it, like it, subscribe it, comment on it. I'll read your comments. But thank you very much for watching. Have a good evening.